Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, and welcome to MindShifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce. And we are in two different locations today. Michael is driving back from out in the desert, and I'm here in Las Vegas. And we've already got David and Tim on the line. And Michael, how's your drive coming?
It's coming very well. I'm just sitting here right now. There's a spot when I'm coming back from Dr. Andraki's out here in the desert, which I get to stop at. If I go over the hill, we lose our signal. So I'm sitting here looking 360 degrees around the mountains that are absolutely awesome, and a sky that's got these beautiful white fluffy clouds, deep blue sunshine, and let's see, it is 73 degrees. So that's where I'm at this point, and we're delighted to be sharing the show with you, to have you on the line with us. And, of course, our project is that of joining with each other in learning forgiveness. And that forgiveness means the way that you remove any and every form of hostility or fear that your mind or your body can possibly produce, and getting back to living totally, completely, truly in a human life, which is the active presence of love. So we're here to support you in that. And we're delighted that you're joining us and giving us the privilege of getting to play with you. David, Dr. Tim, how do you gentlemen be this morning? Or this afternoon in your world. I'm still in morning here.
I'm doing fabulous. We're having a shower here in the Ozarks. Seems like it's a continuum. It's almost like taking a bath every day. It looks to feel like it's going to rain every day. So it's been coming down for the last hour or so, and so we're getting more rain here. And other than that, everything is going very well. And it's going well with the rain. It's not like other than that. It's just rain.
They'd be just delighted to see that rain out here in the desert right now. Actually, things are very beautiful and very green, lots of desert flowers. The high-level heat hasn't hit yet, and so it's just awesome out here right now, the wildflowers. It's very cool. Dr. Tim, how do you be, sir?
Doing quite well, thank you. We are experiencing sunny weather and about 70 degrees, so that's a joy to many around here. And I'm just sitting with all of the thoughts and processing from yesterday's sharing and some of the feedback I got from people. So I'm doing well. I'm in the middle of recognizing lots of different little pieces of patterns and thoughts about going unconscious, and so.
Well, if there's anybody that's new to the show, let me introduce Dr. Tim. Dr. Tim is a psychologist who works up in Chicago area, Crystal Lake, and for 6 years, once a week has been doing a support group. And if you missed yesterday's show, you might want to download it from the archive on www.whyagain.com. And Tim shared a really deep personal process that he went through and had a major breakthrough with the space that his support group was holding, at the MindShifters support group. And so is there anything to share about that at this point? Okay.
Well, I think just that there was a lot of literally fading in and out yesterday as I was listening. I saw some comments on the chat room, and I just didn't really have the attention to respond to some of those and listen to what you were saying as you were explaining different parts of the codependent process. And then I've just been doing a lot more reflecting about my dad in his role as power person for me, and the different ways that he would avoid or go unconscious. And so I've just had a lot of waves of different emotions going on since then throughout the evening. I woke up a couple times last night just thinking about the process. So there's just a lot going on, a lot shifting. And I'm hoping that I can continue to make time to let this flow and do more worksheets over this next few days. And uncover more, because if there's anything that I'd like to get from this, it would be an increased ability to stay conscious whenever an issue comes up. Over the past years I've been doing this work, I've gotten much better at becoming aware of when I get triggered to anger or fear or sadness or hurt or confusion, and that's working. I'd like to continue getting better at that, but I'm quite better at recognizing that now than I was when I first started this work. But this last incident of going so completely unconscious reveals to me that I have quite a bit of work to do about that. So I'd like to improve.
Welcome to the human race.
Yep.
Welcome to the human race. Here we are, we humans, just doing what we humans do. That's pretty cool. Anything in particular that we can support you with, or anything in particular to share about what's been happening for you?
Well, I think one thing I've thought of several times is that my dad, another way to go unconscious essentially was to have a drink or two.
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't just when he would go into the den, but it would be having a drink or two. So I've expanded my thoughts about that process and when I might have felt, disconnected from him or abandoned by him or anything along those lines, and looked at it as, okay, so every time he would come home and just go right to the martini bar or whatever, there's another way in which he would not be available at that intimate level or that emotional level. And so I've been doing some reflecting about that relative to, my relationship with my children and my significant other, and just trying to hold a space to breathe through some of that. And I did a little bit of breathing last night and didn't find myself going into any still points, so I'm certain there's some resistance to that. So I haven't made the time yet this morning to do more worksheets, so I have a chunk of time after the call today to set aside to do some more worksheets and a breathing session. So awesome. Well,
you bring up a really good point, and something that people who had a parent that used alcohol a lot, something that a lot of people don't realize is that their power person wasn't. They didn't have a parent. When the alcohol kicks in, and of course that's not just a drink, but somebody who uses alcohol. I don't know how extreme that was with your dad, but the truth is they didn't have a parent. They didn't have, the power person was, I'm not here to be your parent. I'm leaving. And of course, 2 shots of scotch and nobody's home.
Yeah, I don't ever recall seeing my dad intoxicated, sloppy drunk, angry drunk, or anything like that. I don't ever remember him doing anything embarrassing. But on a regular basis, he would come home and have a martini before dinner, or 2 on a, depending upon the dinner time. And and as I mentioned yesterday, he was the kind of person who was really strongly defended against any emotion other than joy or anger, or happiness, I'd say, not really joy,
right,
or anger. And so any kind of sadness, any kind of fear, any kind of emotional hurt or pain, these weren't really talked about or processed. He stayed in the realm of logic and engineering, and I'm certain that he was in many ways using alcohol to maintain that, to just keep other emotions and responses suppressed.
Yeah. So have you ever found yourself reflexively doing that before you got conscious of it?
Yeah, I think that since doing this work, I'm much more conscious of it. I think what happens with me is more that I make that unconscious switch like I did 2 weeks ago without alcohol. I just flip into the, okay, I'll hold a space of love for the other person.
Yep.
And in that, without realizing it, denying my sadness or pain or fear and completely blocking it out and not paying any attention to it. And that was one of the reveals that came in that worksheet process when I said, what do I feel? Well, I feel the fear or the sadness or the resigned. And near the end, one of the things that I saw, I wrote down in number 10, was that I still avoid issues by putting others first. So what I learned is a way of hiding the fact that I've gone unconscious for me is to see myself as trying to hold a space of love for another person or the person that I'm in this discussion or this interaction with. And so I focus on just trying to be calm and loving and what they might need, when really what's happened is I've had some hurt or pain or confusion come up in me, and before I was consciously aware of it, I've shut it off.
Nope.
So that's something I need to continue to look at, and what's coming to me now is I simply need to be willing to be more in the feeling of out of control or sad or hurt.
Well, but we're real men. We're not supposed to feel.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's got to be a more conscious ability to stay with it and not fall into, okay, I'm going to be here for this other person.
Right. Well, I so totally acknowledge you for your willingness to put yourself out on this level, in public media and.
Well, it's just you and I talking. It's not public.
Yeah. You have a thought there, Jeannie?
We do have a hand up in the switchboard.
Cool. Well, let's see what the question's about.
I believe that it is Terry.
Hello, everyone.
Hey there, Terry. You must be on the road somewhere.
Yes, I'm just the other side of Knoxville, headed toward Asheville up in the mountains. So hopefully I'll have a good signal here as the call unfolds.
You're loud and clear.
Yes. I wanted to share a little bit, if this is a good space for that now. I shared a little bit of process with David this morning and what had come up, what my experience was last night and this morning, how the process worked. Hello?
Go ahead. We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, I thought it dropped the call. Well, last night I drove, and I was driving kind of late, and I got tired and a little spacey, and I thought, okay, it's time to stop. And so as I stopped and I was settling down and relaxing, I started experiencing this guilt and this fear, and it was over an issue that it was way out of proportion of what my mind was telling me it should be, and then it was as if I was experiencing myself being attacked by this guilt and fear at a very strong and deep level. Okay, and there was like several different things going on at one time, and it was almost overpowering. It felt like it was overpowering, overwhelming, and just intense guilt, fear, emotions coming up. And I was saying, okay, I'm going to do a worksheet. And it's like, another part of me laughed, like, oh, you're going to do a worksheet. However, I did one worksheet, which was another worksheet, because I've been doing minimum 10 a day now for quite a while. So, and I didn't put this together until just a little bit ago, but because the pump was primed by the continuing action of doing a minimum of 10 a day for some length of time, then when this huge layer, this chunk came up, one worksheet was enough to help me to begin to shift. And then I shifted from that. I did some prayer work and a little bit of other stuff, and then I did some breathing and moved through that guilt and fear and released it. You know, it was as it was coming up, allowed it to come up and released it. When I witnessed that whole process, it's like, wow. And when I woke this morning, one of the things I've dealt with for years and years, as long as I can remember, is waking up to this sense of impending doom, fear, and kind of almost terror. It's come from growing up in a crazy home, alcohol, whatever, and all the stuff I put myself into situations. It's like, you know, every morning it's like, oh, what is it going to be? You know, what happened? You know, all that kind of stuff. And now in the last few months, there's been some real breakthroughs with that, and I've had some moments, you know, lots of mornings that I've woken up and that feeling was not there. And this is after as long, 40 years of this stuff going on, literally, about maybe longer, at least that long. And so I woke up this morning and I noticed that I was connected, and my thoughts were of God and love and being connected. And then that was different, and it was different in the respect that as opposed to remembering first off the guilt and fear process that was coming up so intensely last night, that I was connected to this space of love. It's like I went to sleep breathing and all. It's like, wow, that was a major shift to have that level of intensity of the negative emotions coming up, process through that, and then to wake up into this state that has not been my normal state of waking up until this time. And so as I woke up and moved into that, I started doing my worksheet process immediately. I got up and got into doing my 10 minimum worksheets for today, and as I was going through that, I could see at another level that there was this aspect of me, that guilt, that was the punisher under the punishment thought, that all punishment comes from my mind. It's like I am there's this punisher. It's not I, capital I, but there's an I, me, myself, that is the actual punisher. So I had an experience of seeing that aspect of the mind that had been punishing me for years. And it was enlightening. It's the words don't do it justice at this point. But the shift and the awareness that happened when I saw that whole aspect of my mind as punisher, and that's how that had been a driving force that could easily be and has been at many times perceived as some outside influence or effect, as opposed to seeing it as what it really is a deeply held file of corrupt data in my mind. So that was a powerful whole piece of work around that. I appreciate you letting me share.
Well, that's so awesome. And, it's a game that virtually everybody plays. Once they decide they're guilty, they're wrong, they're bad, once they've bought into, I am not a being created of love, then they go into that punishment game. But like everything else that we don't want to deal with, people deny it. And when they deny it, they dissociate from it. When they dissociate from it, they'll find only too many people who are happy to project it on and blame it on the Creator. Oh, the Creator's going to punish me. Oh, by the way, you know what the Creator did? The Creator made up this fiery place for me to burn. And, it's just that fantasy that we're dissociating from that grows and grows and grows until we're sure that a Creator is willing for us to be tortured for eternity. And just how bizarre that is to believe millions of people have bought into it, and it's all an internal dynamic. It's something we did and then projected on the creator. So thanks for opening the space for that. And tell us a little bit about why you're doing 10 worksheets a day. You've been doing worksheets for years. Tell me about that. And I ask that question for the benefit of those who have said, oh, I'm not doing those worksheets, or, well, I might do one, or, tell us about your process there.
Okay. And as you were just sharing that, when that works, it was like the second worksheet I'd done this morning when it literally, it almost took my breath away. It was like when I saw that the Punisher was me. It was like, whoa, it was the owning of it that was so abrupt and shocking to see it at that level. So it really was connected right back to what you said. So as far as why I'm doing 10 worksheets, a minimum of 10 worksheets a day, is because when 2.5 years ago, David and I connected at a deeper level, really deeper place, and I was in a space that was as bad as, it can get, so to speak. Not as bad as it gets, but, it's a rough place, okay? And I committed to doing one worksheet a day. And
David, by the way, is the center manager. Just so those who are new to the show, Jeannie said David was on the line. Well, David's on the line with us, so he's the center manager at Heartland. So go ahead. Excuse me, Terry.
Yeah, so David said we're going to do building the brain cells this game, and it was a whole phenomenal process around that. So building the brain cells consists of making an agreement, keeping that agreement, and then having someone as a support that can help hold you accountable. It's accountability. I have an accountability with someone, with myself, and with a partner that's a support piece there. So it's like, all right, David, all I'm willing to do is one worksheet a day, and I'll call you for 10 days. That's how we started. And as that continued over the weeks, days, months, and I grew in my connection and actually truly made an agreement with myself that I kept my word to myself for the first time in God knows how long on a consistent basis, that it created this foundation that has allowed me to build it like Thoreau. You've got your castles in the air, but it's time to put the foundations under them, and it's all good and proper, but you got to get that footer in there. And coming from my construction background, I know what that means. You got to have that foundation in there and just crumbles. It's a house of sand. So that has strengthened me over the last 30 months into the level of continuously doing the things, adding different agreements and stepping up the game, so to speak, here and there, shifting, staying connected consistently. But all started with that first module that gave me the strength to do the second module and the third module and the fourth module and so on. So last fall, during a workshop that you were doing at Mount Unity in Mountain Home, I heard again the 40-day challenge, so to speak. Do 5 worksheets a day for 40 days. I said, you know what, I'm going to re-up on that one. I've been doing other agreements and things, so I took that on as doing the 5 worksheets a day and a minimum. I had to work through that whole process. I could do more if I wanted to. It's like, I don't have to just do 5. And that's what supported me last night, that I had worked through that block around, okay, well, I've done my 10 worksheets, and I don't have to do anymore, that kind of thing. I knew that I could still step into a space to do more if I need to. And so with the 5, I had continuous depth, experience of more and more connectedness to love, tapped into what you had described on the LMD, or someone whoever created that LMD sheet, to strive for the goal to have the cellular experience of the presence of love and begin to truly have a cellular experience of the presence of love. Phenomenal. And to get pieces of that, taste of that, which was encouraging me to continue on. And it was, as I re-upped and was going along in the Why Again book, continued the series, finished up 40 days, I finished up the Why Again. My agreement was 5 minutes of reading in Y again each night minimum, along with the 5 worksheets each day. So on the 39th day, I finished the Y again book, reading again. And then the 40th day, I completed my worksheets. And it's like, wow, was that synchronistic? And there were so many things that were tied together and experienced and enhanced that whole process. So I said, you know what, I'm going to re-up again. I'm going for a year. And then right around the solstice, which is the 2-year anniversary of when I first engaged with David on the building of brain cells, I upped it to 10 worksheets a day, and have stuck with it, on a consistent level because of the benefits that I get. And it's not, it's a paradox too, though. It's not like I can just say, at any time prior to that, well, I'm going to do 10 worksheets a day. Well, yeah, maybe, because I didn't have I didn't have the foundation, to go back to that analogy, to carry myself through that. So it had to be built brick by brick, so to speak, to get to the point where I could consistently do that and experience the benefits of it, like going through this big chunk last night that was like David sharing with me. He said, wow, it sounds like you had a mind vomit like we've heard you describe before. And it was literally a feeling of being attacked by my own mind with the guilt and all.
Well, that's absolutely awesome. And, there's a story I like to tell about people doing worksheets or choosing to move to love instead of hostility and fear. And it ties together our whole conversation the last couple of weeks about codependence. And if you're new to the show, you might want to go back to the archives and download some of the shows over the last 2 weeks where our conversation's been about codependence to interdependence. And, the only thing we can choose is what we have in brain cells. The only thing we can choose in the way of words, you go back to the ancient scriptures, and they said a man's words come from the abundance of his heart. And so, and the heart there means our dissociated mind or the unconscious. So people who are into vile words and vile feelings and vile behaviors, rage and fear, and that, they don't have a choice. It's just what they're filled with. And the forgiveness process is about emptying yourself of that and putting something new in. And I acknowledge the commitment that you made and how it's taken you in 2.5 years from some pretty heavy-duty stuff into you naturally wake up and what you're filled with starts to feed to you first thing in the morning instead of, what am I guilty of today? What am I going to get punished for? What's my power person going to do today? What am I going to do to protect myself? Instead of that, it's like, here I am connected to the actual presence of love. Here's my human life. This is awesome. But you're able to make that choice because you have the brain cells to make that choice, and you've made a quantum shift. It's like you've hit a critical mass point where that shifted, and now the natural thing is to move into the presence of love instead of some form of hostility or fear. And the story I tell about is we bring a dog into the room. And, of course, you've heard me tell this story before, but you bring a dog into the room, and there's a plate of hamburger, a pound of hamburger, and there's an ounce of gold. Now, the dog has a choice. The dog could choose the ounce of gold and go out and buy 500 pounds. Well, actually, it'd be a lot more than that today, probably be close to 1,000 pounds of hamburger. And/or he can choose the pound of hamburger. But, of course, the dog not having the brain cells for the value of an ounce of gold, the dog is going to choose a hamburger. We know that every dog in the world that comes into the room, there is not going to be one that's going to come into the room and sniff the ounce of gold. The dog is going to go to the pound of hamburger. That's just the way it is, because it has no brain cells for the value of something different. And when we live and we've been brought forward into the world through a power person, somebody who wasn't functioning as love, and our internal store is filled with words based in hostility and fear, realities based in hostility, fear, guilt, blame, punishment, then that's what runs. And it runs and it runs and it runs automatically. And for those who live in that, they can't imagine that you could possibly live. If you come from a generations where that guilt and punishment and blame have run and run and run everybody's life in your bloodline, then it's natural. That's what's going to happen. And I just acknowledge you for the courage and the work that you've done to jump in. And, I mean, to get to the point where after two years you make a commitment to up from 5 worksheets a day to 10, where many people are like, well, I don't even know if I want to touch one because I don't want to face what's in there. And that you faced it and walked through it, you know. And Tim, the same thing, that you face it and we walk through it and come out the other side, and the natural state becomes to be connected. That's our and it's building the value of reaching for a worksheet as opposed to, no, I reach for my hostility and fear. The day that the energy shifts in the dark, oh, an ounce of gold. I can go out and buy 1,000 pounds of hamburgers today. the ounce of gold. But until then, it's not going to happen. And, of course, we're here, you know, with this radio show. Our whole idea of MindShifters Radio is to support people in building the brain cells for something other than the behaviors that have perhaps run your bloodline for who knows how many thousands of years, and to make a shift into an actual human life. And of course, we determine what a human life is. Hold a baby, you know what a human life is. And by the way, if the Hoffmans are listening, we have some friends named Dale and Loretta Hoffman who had an awesome baby yesterday. His name is Shemaiah, which is the Aramaic word for heaven. So congratulations to Dale. You may get to see that baby while you're in Nashville because, of course, that's where they are. So you might want to check with them and look them up.
All right.
So, Dr. Tim, any other thoughts from Terry's conversation and your process?
I would echo some of the words in the chat room. It's great to hear Terry have such enthusiasm and excitement. Sam says it sounds like Terry's flying high as a result of, like, the payoff for having faced the darker side of being his own punisher all these years. So congratulations, Terry. It's wonderful to hear, and I salute you in your determination and in your results.
Thank you, Tim.
Another piece of the puzzle for me is that, you know, we've part of our vision statement at Heartland is to create a generation of mentors who can shift the energy. And usually it's the women who talk about their feelings and what happened, because we live in a culture where as men we're programmed, you're not supposed to feel, you're not supposed to deal, you're not supposed to talk about those things. And here we are, 3 men right now, and we'll ask David to chime in too, because I'm sure he's got some things to share about what we're talking about. But here we are having a public conversation about the garbage that we've put ourselves through and the process of healing it. And it's just like, whew, it's awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. So, David, do you have anything to share with us? Good morning, David.
Just getting my phone off of mute.
Yes, sir.
You know, it is amazing to listen to this conversation from some males, and you know, we've done some of this processing before, and this is to open the door on a few things about relationships and communication between men and men and men and women and women and men and vice versa and all that. And you know, we touched on so many things today about, you know, beginning with the consciousness. And I remember one definition of consciousness is whatever it is that I focus on, I become conscious of. And when Terry talks about that he focused on doing a number of worksheets each day, everyone comes across this challenge of of choosing to do the worksheets. And I think that it's, for myself, that there's a underlying part of me that knows that as soon as I choose this, well, then there's going to be a shift, and I'm going to have to look at something. It's not at a conscious level that that's at. I think that that's that inner guidance that's encouraging and saying, you know, just go ahead and do this. And it's very important to find someone that will support you in doing that, which is what Terry was referring to, that when we make an agreement that we're to have the support of someone else that is committed to doing the same thing is what it's all about. We talked about before about making agreements and making commitments, and one of the words that as a child most of us used was that we had our best friend and we made promises to our friend. And that was the thing that really solidified whether we trusted someone or not. And that word that trust is there is so important, because what I believe in my projection of it is that goes on based on my own experience is that I stopped trusting. I stopped trusting people. I stopped trusting, quote, parents, the government, the religions, and the biggest person that I stopped trusting was myself. That when I say that I'm going to do something and I don't, and then I do something other than that, then it puts up this resonance in there about not trustworthy, to be untrustworthy. And then who is it that I trust? So the purpose of this support program that's on here and the work, and as I see it and here at Heartland and with everyone that I'm connected with, is around supporting people to do their work. Without that, then we're pretty well stuck. At least that's my projection of all of it. And it is fascinating to be part of Terry's process. And when Sam was commenting, or at least when Tim was saying what Sam talked about, he sounds like he's on a real high. My first thoughts from that was, oh, good, he's getting ready to process something even deeper now, which is always
interesting. It'll be interesting to hear from you on Monday, Terry, and see what's come up, because we know that the next level of vitality, if there's another piece of work to be done, allows us, and this is a wonderful thing about the process, it allows us to move to the next depth of healing. And one of the things that has people shy away from doing their work is going to that next level, that next depth, because as you're doing it, especially in the initial phases, when I say initial phases, I'm saying in the first 10 years. In the first 10 years, each time you hit a new level of vitality, there's a new layer to move, and it can become extremely intense. If you read the book of Job is all about a healing crisis. It's all about Job starting out. If you remember, his conclusion is, that which I feared most has come upon me. You go to the opening words of Job, and it tells us how Job is this upright and righteous man, but he's got fear that his children aren't going to be like he is. And then it's everything he goes through, and his process in order to heal and come out the other side with everything that he lost and more. His process is so intense that at one point he begs God for a reprieve. I need an intermission here, God. And you can tell how intense his process became by the intermission that he asked for. If you go read that book, what you'll hear is Job says, and this isn't about theology, this is about who we function as human beings. And when we decide we're going to enter into the healing process, it's pretty intense. But Job says, God, just give me time to swallow my saliva. That's how intense it can become. And it will seem, when the hostility and fear and the issues are up on the surface, like this is the only thing that's real, this is what's true about me, I'll never have anything else, and we get lost in it. And there's where one of the skills of being able to step back from the mind and become the thinker apart from the thought, the feeler apart from the feeling, the actor apart from the actions, to step into being, then you step apart from the non-being mind that holds all that hostility and fear, and you realize that that isn't who you are. And in the ancient teachings, that battle that goes on between being and non-being was called the Battle of Armageddon. The Battle of Armageddon is the point where you decide that you're going to live a human life, and then who's going to run the show? Is it going to be the active presence of love? Is it going to be the old hostility and fear-based mind? And as you process through that hostility and fear-based mind, man, it gets intense. But, there's no apology for that. It's like, that's just the process, and if you want to come out the other side, if you want to wake up like Terry described waking up this morning in this breathing, connected space, experiencing in his cellular structure the presence of the love of God, which I'd offer that's what we're designed for, that's what's natural for human beings, then you're going to be willing to do your work and to move through those layers that are not Dr. Feelgood. Most people would rather take a pill, and I acknowledge you, gentlemen, for the willingness to move through it, stay with it, and be responsible for it, because that's just such an awesome, awesome thing to do.
And also, keep in mind, folks, that Terry woke up. When he talks about waking up, he's sleeping in his truck. It wasn't like he had this big, warm, comfortable bed that he woke up and stretched out and was like, oh, it's a glorious morning. He's sleeping, sitting, not knowing what he was doing. He's in his truck. And just sitting there. It's kind of interesting.
So, Terry, you didn't have a hotel room? You stayed in your truck last night as you were driving? You just stopped and slept?
Am I on
Terry?
now? Yeah.
You are, yes, sir.
Oh,
yep.
Yeah. No, David's assuming that. I stopped and got a room last night.
Oh, good. Good for you. I'm glad. I was going to say, that adds a whole other layer to it when you picture Terry, who's about 6'4", sitting in his truck sleeping, which I know you've done on that drive to Asheville before. So you did have a warm and comfortable bed to sleep in. Well, that's nice.
That was part of the process. I tapped in. I had this whole thing going on in my mind about spending the money on the room or not, and then I got the hit, this nice glow. Yes, do get the room, and then I got the room, and then I got all the guilt was triggered by me doing that. So it was like the perfect setup, and I thought it's like, what is going on? I know I made the right choice a few minutes ago, and now I'm under this vicious attack. That's the way I would describe it, as vicious. So it was just perfect in that whole orchestration of the way it unfolded. So my mind was completely going crazy. It was just, you can imagine what was going on inside this head, that time with these different dynamics and just what is going on. It was like, whoa, it was pretty big.
So the whole guilt attack was a result of selecting getting a room rather than just sleeping for a couple hours in your truck and continuing your drive?
Exactly.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. It just kind of proves the point that anything will do, doesn't it? If we need an opportunity to learn forgiveness, anything will do. I treat myself like crap, I'm guilty. I treat myself nicely, I'm guilty. It's like the mind always plays out its stuff. That's awesome. And to be conscious enough to work through that is absolutely fabulous.
It was quite powerful.
And what's really wonderful is that I just assumed that he had done that because I've seen him do this before, that he has stopped, and through that, going through that process, even being uncomfortable or being comfortable, then he was willing to process through whatever that is. So, and I am glad that you also stopped and got a space last night as well. Good for you.
That's so cool.
There's something that as we talk about this whole idea of stepping out and doing it, it's illustrated in so many movies and in books and in people talking about things and doing it. And I let people know, most of the mind wants it right now, because I think that it's just been programmed to have that instant gratification with that. And so for the people that are just really wondering whether this is working, how long, then I kind of put it in terms that the speed or the quickness of your healing is measured by your level of dedication to practice, using the tools every day in your life, your earnestness in being supportable and supporting others, your degree of commitment to the process to do whatever is necessary to experience your true essence. That's the work. And so rewarding is the work. And we really, my projection of it is, to do it on our own, very difficult. And as one of my teachers told me, he said, why would you want to do it on your own anyway? That's just an ego-based thing. His projection is that's the reason that there's 6 or 7 billion people on the planet, that we keep having enough people here that look, and everywhere we turn around, then there's someone reflecting and mirroring back to us what it is that we need to do. So that's all.
Let me add one more little piece there. Part of the process, part of my practice the last couple of weeks, I made a commitment that each night before I lay down to breathe, I've got a journal and I write to God. As I'm talking to God, and I'm talking to my God consciousness, and I'm tapping in and working with understanding my consciousness as being God's consciousness and this, that, and the other. So that last night, as this was going on, I'm sitting there and I'm writing, I know I got the okay on this. What is going on? So I've got a little written journal of that little prophet piece about, okay, God, what is going on here? It was okay. It was all great, feeling real good. And now what's going on with this whole turn of events kind of thing? So that was a nice little part of it too.
Well, that really brings up another really powerful and important principle of the work, Terry, and that is when I decide to embody the next level of being, and in that case it would be I'm going to take care of myself. Rather than sit upright and be uncomfortable and, wiped out in the morning, I'm going to, and my cash flow is short, so I'd just as soon drive, sleep for a couple hours and get there. But when I choose to do something from a higher place, everything unlike that higher place that's in my carbon-based memory system, in this body-mind unit, in this multi-generational database, everything unlike that has to come up for healing. If I decide, here's what I'm going to do. If I come from a bloodline of rage and fear and grief and pain and trauma and drama and hatred and vengeance and separation and murder and war and all of that, if I come from 1,000 generations of that, which most of us do, and I say, I just held a newborn child this morning. What an awesome presence of life that is. What an awesome presence of love. I think I'll choose to live a human life. Then, and in the Eastern Orthodox teachings, the whole idea was to incarnate. So if I realize what I am is the active presence of love, that's my human life, and I decide that I'm going to bring that into the world, then everything that's in this multi-generational database that we call a body, that's unlike that, has to surface for healing in order to make room for us to incarnate. So each time you take a new step, you can expect that, okay, there's going to be a layer come up for healing, for forgiveness. And there's just one more reason why the ongoing continuous use of the tools is so important. And if you want to take a really huge leap in doing it, the first 6 years or so that I was involved in this work, it was a part-time thing. I was in the business world, and I woke up one morning and I had the guidance to walk away from the business world and go back to school and become a full-time teacher of this work. And what that came out of was my realization that the best way to be a full-time teacher the best way to be a full-time student of it was to become a full-time teacher of it. And I get this blessing that I get to say it over and over and over and over again to so many different people with so many questions, and I get to interact with them on their questions and their process, and I get to do me. It's an awesome gift to give yourself to say, okay, I'm going to, now whether you teach it, if you just teach it to somebody at work or somebody in your family or somebody down the block, and all the things that are going to come up and all the things you're going to go through, it's an awesome opportunity. And it's kind of like forced growth. You got to do it. You got to go through it. Does that resonate any brain cells for you, Dr. Tim?
Yes, it certainly does. It is forced growth. It is forced growth. And I've had several times in my process where I had the let's beat myself up song playing in my head because I wasn't perfect or I didn't live up to everything I was teaching someone else. And my hunch is that that's part of my going unconscious 2 weeks ago. that whole process of I should be beyond this, I shouldn't have an issue with this, I should be above it, I should be able to handle this without an emotional response. And that's probably a big part of triggering the unconscious reaction.
Yeah, if the power person checked out, the automatic inclination is going to be to follow the pattern set by the power person and be defined by it. And what you're doing, as you do this process, is you're saying, instead of being defined by my power person, just playing out whatever that is, I'm going to wake up to something different. I'm going to wake up to a new level. And something that just occurs to me as I'm kind of tapping into the energy of the whole conversation we're having is there's an awesome song out there, and you can jump on the internet and listen to it. I don't know that we've got it on the site or not, Jeannie, but by Carly Simon. And the song is I Haven't Got Time for the Pain. And there's a line in it that says, you taught me how to fill my heart with love, how to bring in all that bright light coming down from the heavens. That's our birthright, folks. Listen to that tune. She says it so powerfully. There is not one scintilla of reason on planet Earth for any human being to suffer. Except that we've got 1,000 generations of suffering in there, and we don't know how to let it go.
Michael?
Yes, sweetie.
Mike. Okay. We've got a couple of questions in the chat room. They want you to explain what multi-generational database, what do you mean by that, and what do you mean by incarnation. And then the other thing is they mentioned that, you're talking about that it seems like punishment of ourselves seems to rule in many, many areas. And the other person says, yeah, but that's what we've been taught. That's what we've learned.
Right. Well, it's what we've learned, and so it's what we do. It's what we've had modeled for us. If you go back to that's why I suggested if you weren't involved in the earlier conversations about codependence, is that what happens is we develop what we call in this work a non-being self based upon our interactions with our power person. And our power person is someone who wasn't functioning out of love, which is our birthright to have experienced them functioning out of. And that we fill this carbon-based memory system with the dynamics of what's been modeled for us, and then that's what tends to govern and run our lives. So when we talk about the multi-generational database, this body-mind unit is not a physical device. If we listen to Einstein says this, on such things as matter, we have been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy whose vibrations have been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. So Einstein says, folks, matter does not exist. So you don't have a body. What you have is an energy system, and the energy system is designed to store everything that comes to it. So every thought, every feeling, every reality, every power person experience, everything that we bring in with our senses is registered energetically and holographically in every cell of our structure. And that includes the sperm and the egg. So when a child is conceived, that child has in its structure every thought, every feeling, every reality of every generation that went before it. It simply plays out. It simply repeats over and over and over again. So imagine that we've got a computer and there's a database in there. And so we have a generation of people who put information into the database, and some of the information's wrong. Some is just not correct. It's corrupt data. And so that computer is handed on to the next generation. The next generation has no idea how to go in and correct the incorrect data, but it just continues to add information. And it compounds the errors, the corrupt data of the previous generations by not knowing how to deal with the incorrect information. And so based on the calculations the computer does, it accumulates more corrupt data. And that computer is handed on to the next generation. And the next generation takes it, doesn't know how to access the corrupt data to correct it, and so it creates more incorrect conclusions. And so we see this compounding from generation to generation. The way they said this in the ancient Aramaic physics language, and Aramaic is not a theological language. It is the root language of at least 5 of the world's major religions, but it's a physics language. It's about genetics. It's about physiology. It's about psychology. And so in that ancient language, they said, the sins of the fathers will be passed, yea, unto 3 and 4 generations. And then they gave us the clue as to how to correct it. Yea, of those who hate me, the sins of the fathers will be passed, yea, unto 3 and 4 generations, yea, of those who hate me. Well, what does that mean? Well, first of all, we have to establish who's giving us instructions. Somebody was putting the pen to the paper and was given correct instructions about how this multi-generational database works. We're not punished for what our fathers did or their fathers or their fathers. We were just handed a computer that had a whole database in it, and if there's corrupt data, then we're going to tend to live out of it if we don't know how to correct it. Where is the correction? Well, it tells us in that passage exactly where the correction is. Here's the creator, love, not the punisher. That's a whole fantasy made up by those who have to project and blame somebody else, who have no idea how to deal with their own hostility and fear, are willing to kill people, though they say they believe in the man named Yeshua. They're willing to go to war. They're willing to verbally, physically abuse, whatever. So they're being run by that database and have no idea how to correct it. And here's love, the active presence of love, saying, folks, here's how your database works. You were handed something that has all of your generations in it. And if you, and the word there in Aramaic is not hate as in a love-hate relationship, it's those who are separated from me. And so here's love saying to us, if you are separated from the active presence of me, love, then you're going to be stuck with the instruction set that came with your computer, that came with your body-mind unit, this multi-generational database. The work that Terry's talking about doing, the work that David's talking about doing with building the brain cells, the work that the work that we're working with is, how do you get reconnected to the active presence of love? And then how do you access what's in the database that never belonged in the database so you can correct it? So instead of handing on a computer that has these compounding generational errors, what happens is you hand on a computer that has a whole cleaner space, a whole cleaner drive. The garbage of many generations as you do your work is removed literally from your genetics. So were you to conceive a child tomorrow, instead of you compounding the hostilities and fears of the previous generations, you've cleaned it up and handed on a cleaner database. In the ancient teachings, you remember the story of the Jews wandering in the desert for 40 years? Why did it take 40 years to do a 2-week journey? It did because they didn't know how to remove what didn't belong. You remember what had to happen to get out of the desert into the promised land. That's a metaphor. What had to get out, they said, is the old generation had to die off. That did not mean everybody in old physical bodies had to physically die. It meant that you had to face every hostility and fear in your generational database to remove it. The forgiveness tool at www.whyagain.com, right-hand side of the page, click on download worksheets, download the first 2 links. You'll have the instruction set for how to forgive. You'll have the reality management worksheet from the Aramaic. Start to put the pen to the paper. It will change your life, and as you do it, you will start to see how you're getting ready to create the best year yet of your eternal life. That's what MindShifters Radio is about. That's what forgiveness is about. And that's what we're here to support you in. Check out our schedule for the summer. This summer, we'll be doing a 65-day intensive starting July the 8th. Come and play with us. We hold a space for you to have the best year yet of your eternal life. And we hold you in a blessing. Take care.